Hello, this is Miss B, and it is Monday, April 21st. Today you're going to use the packet that your sub has handed out to you and follow along with the video. You're going to show all your work. You're going to use your calculators and be doing the work along with me. At the end, there will be a purple worksheet for homework. Please be kind to each other, and most importantly, our guest speaker. Okay, so turn to this page, and what we're doing today is doing a little prep for the upcoming MCAs. So this is all stuff that we have already done. It's just a little bit of a reminder of how to do these. So we'll be turning fractions into decimals and percents and vice versa, like all forms. So our first one is changing 2/3 into a decimal and a percent. So think in your head, what kind of a math problem are all fractions? Hopefully you're saying division problem. So you can use your calculator then to do 2 divided by 3. Go ahead and do that and write that decimal down. And I got 0.666666, and at the very end they usually put a 7 because they are rounding up. We only want to take our decimal point out 2 spots, so we would have 0.6, and then that 6 would round the next 6 up to a 7. So then you have your decimal. Now there are a couple of different ways that you can change this decimal into a percent. A lot of you just think about moving that decimal over 2 spots, or you can use your calculator and multiply by 100. So either way, do that and get your percent. All right, so we should be at 67%. All right, our next one is 0.125. Now, if we say that with proper place value language, it makes it easier to write it as a fraction. So 125 thousandths. So you can write it like that, 125 thousandths. Now, that can be simplified. So if you go on your calculator and hit your fraction button and put that in, now this only works if you have the TI 34. So if you don't, then you may want to look on with a partner that maybe has that calculator. So you put that in, and then you arrow out so that you have the full fraction, and then you're going to hit the simplify button and enter. And it's going to take you down to 25 over 200. I'll pause a minute and let you get caught up. It looks like this if you get to this point. And does anyone remember what that arrow down means? It means that you need to simplify again. So hit simplify, enter again, and you should get this, which means you can simplify again. So hit simplify, enter, and it will get us all the way down to 1/8 with no arrow, so it means it's done. Then we need to change that decimal into a percent, so I would like you to use whichever of the above ways you want. You can either move the decimal 2 spots to the right, or you can multiply by 100, your choice. And then write that in the percent box. You should have gotten 12.5%. And yes, you can have a decimal with a percent. Now let's go the other way. We'll start with our percent, and we're going to change that into a decimal and a fraction. I think most of you remember that all percents are out of what? Hopefully you're saying out of 100. So 20 out of 100. Now you can simplify that using your calculator, or you can think, I know that 20 goes into 100 evenly, so I can just think about dividing this by 20 over 20. So 20 goes into 20 once, and 20 goes into 100 5 times. Then we want to change our 1/5 into a decimal. So there are also a couple different ways that you can do this. One, we can get a denominator. Well, actually, we already have a denominator of 100, right? 20 hundredths. So if you can say it, you should be able to write it. So if we wrote that as 20 hundredths, it would look like that. All right, I would like you to try 36 hundredths, the next decimal. Try that as a fraction and a percent on your own. I'm going to pause and let you work for a couple minutes, and then we'll come together. All right, so 36 hundredths as a percent would be 36%, and 36 hundredths written as a fraction looks like this. And I'm not sure which way you chose to do this, because you could divide by a giant 1, or you could use your simplifying button, but either way you should get it all the way down to 9/25. Okay, 12.8%. One thing I didn't talk about with the 20% is remembering that we can go backwards with our decimal. So if we move the decimal point when we're changing decimal to percent to the right 2 spots, if we're going from percent backwards to a decimal, we can move it the other way 2 spots. So we would have 128 thousandths. Okay, then I want you to write that as a fraction, and then you can use your fraction button on your calculator to simplify 128 thousandths. I'll give you a minute to do that. And you had to hit your simplify enter button a few times to get down to 16 over 125. All right, next one. 17 over 25, so you can set that up as a division problem and do 17 divided by 25 and get 0.68. Move your decimal over 2 spots to the right and you have 68%. I hope this is all coming back to you. Next one, if we say it with place value language, we would call that 8/10. So write 8/10 as a fraction. And those are both even numbers. If you cut them in half, you will get 4/5. And 8/10, if you move your decimal over 2 spots to here, you will need to put a placeholder 0 here, and you would have 80%. All right, 30%. 30 out of 100. All percents out of 100. Take a minute to simplify that in the way of your choice. You can either divide by a giant 1 or put it in your calculator. Three-tenths. If you can say 3/10, you should be able to write that as a decimal. 3/10. The 3 has to be in the tenths place. All right, almost done. I'm going to move this up a little bit so the kids in the back can see. 2/5. If we want to change that into a decimal, we would like a 10 or a 100 or a 1,000 on the bottom if possible. But we all know that we can get a 10 on the bottom by multiplying the top and the bottom by 2 and get 4/10. If we can say 4/10, we should be able to write 4/10. Move your decimal over 2 spots, and we will have 40%. All right, try the last one on your own. I'll give you a minute. Okay, so I moved my decimal over twice. I got 74%. I know that this is called 74 hundredths, so I wrote it as 74 hundredths. And when I simplified, I got 37 out of 50. And all I did was cut both of those numbers in half because they are both even numbers. All right, on this slide, I would like you to do all 3 of these on your own. And in a minute, I will put the answers up for you. Use what we just did on the page ahead. And it is not cheating to help each other, but just giving the answers is not okay. Okay, 6% as a decimal. All percents are out of 100. So 6 hundredths, if you wrote that as a decimal, the 6 needs to go in the hundredths place, so tenths, hundredths. put a placeholder 0. So 0.06, 3/8 as a decimal. In my calculator, I would do 3 divided by 8, and you get 0.375, or 375 thousandths. All right, if we said this 8/100ths, if you can say it, you should be able to write it as a decimal because they are said the same. So tenths, hundredths. The 8 has to be in the hundredths place. There you go. All right, Sally's DVD collection is 1/5 comedy, 45/100ths romance, and the rest action. What percent of her DVD collection is action? So if we need our answer in percent, we're probably going to have to put these into a percent to figure this out. So I want you to change 1/5 into a percent using the strategies we've been practicing, and 45/100ths into a percent. Go ahead, you do this work. Okay, I got my 2%. I'm going to add up the 2 that I know. So 20% plus 45%. So 65% like either comedy or romance. But we want to know what our action. So Sally's whole DVD collection, so her whole DVD collection represents 100% of her DVDs. So we need to use that 100% to figure out what is left. So you can set it up as a subtraction problem if you want. So 100% minus comedy and romance, and whatever's left over, that is her, or are her action DVDs. Hopefully this is all coming back to you since this is review. Okay, Emmett is selling tickets to the school play. He sold 28 adult tickets and 12 student tickets. What percent of the tickets that were sold were adult tickets? So we need a percent, but we can't just start with a percent. We usually start with fractions, and we want to know what percent were adult. So I need to think about my word fraction as being adult over total. Remember, total is always the bottom of every fraction. So I know that they're, excuse me, 28 adult, and then the total, we have to add adults and kids together. So add your 28 plus 12. You got that? Okay. All right, now we need to turn this into a percent. 40 does not go evenly into 100, and percents are out of 100. But being that we are able to use a calculator, all fractions are division problems. So 28, I don't know why my pen is jumping, divided by 40, put that into your calculator. Okay, now that's a decimal. They want a percent. So change that percent into a decimal. And what do we need here? We have two spots, the 7 and this, so you have to put a placeholder 0 there. And 78% were adults. Okay, Emily was drawing jelly beans from a jar, replacing them each time. Here's a table of the colors that she drew. Write her experimental probability of drawing a pink jelly bean as a decimal and a percent. So remember that experimental probability means what is the data after they've done the experiment. So Emily already did the experiment. She drew them out. She got 14 green, 17 black, 23 pink, and 20 purple. So experimental probability of getting a pink jelly bean, and we want it as a decimal and a percent. But guess what? We have to start with a fraction first. So we want to start out with a word fraction, and that would be, what color? I forgot. Okay, pink. Over total. So she had 23 pink. And then to get your total, you are going to add all of these numbers together. So do that quickly. I got 74. All right, and that 74 does not go evenly into 100, so that's kind of a yucky number. So all fractions are division problems, so 23 divided by 74. And we're just going to take the decimal point out 2 spots, so 0.31, and then that as a percent is 31%. All right, Devin has 400 beads. 30% are red, 25% are blue, 15% are yellow, the rest are green. How many beads are green? Okay, so this is more than one step. So first, let's add up what percent the red, blue, and yellow are all together. Do this with me, guys. You're turning this in, and I'll be looking at it to see how well you've been following along. So add those up. Get a total. All right, so 70% are either red or blue or yellow. What percent does that leave for green? We need to take our all 400 beads. That's 100% of Devon's beads, right? All 400. So we need to take away the red, blue, and yellow beads. So 30% of his beads are green, but they didn't ask for what percent. They want to know exactly how many beads that is. So now we had to do kind of step 3, and we need 30% of his total beads. Does that make sense? 30% of his 400 total beads. So 30% of means, hopefully the whole class just said times 400, and that you can do in your calculator. There's a percent button. If you can't find your percent button, ask somebody close to you where it is to point out. And I got 120 for green. All right, we're getting to the end. Alex has a bag of Halloween candy. There are 8 Snickers, 3 Twix, 4 Almond Joy, and 5 Milky Ways. What is the experimental probability that he will pull out a Snicker bar if he randomly reaches into the bag and selects one? Write your answer as a fraction, decimal, and percent. So we need to first write a word fraction. So what is the experimental probability that he will pull out a Snicker bar? So Snickers over total. So we'll look up, and there are 8 Snickers. But now we've got to add up all the candy. So 8 plus 3 is 11, plus 4 is 15, plus 5 is 20. So there's 20 total candy bars. So 8 out of 20 is our fraction. So there's our fraction. We wrote it as a fraction. Now we need to write it as a decimal and a percent. Well, we know that if we have 100 on the bottom, it helps us for both of those. And I know that 20 goes evenly into 100 if we multiply by 5. So bring back the good old giant 1. 8 times 5 is 40. 20 times 5 is 100. 40 hundredths looks like this as a decimal, right? 40 hundredths. And like this as a percent. Good job, guys. Okay, your favorite thing, no calculator. So, hopefully the sub is looking at you all putting down your calculators, and you are going to solve this without. But don't worry, I'm here to help. So we have 1/3 divided by 6. We know we can't leave that whole number a whole number. We have to turn it into a fraction. So who remembers what 6 looks like as a fraction? 6 over what? Hopefully you're not saying 6 over 6. 6 over 6 equals 1. We need it to equal 6. All right, 6 over 1. All right, good job. Now, do you remember that good old thing that we learned called keep, change, flip? So we are going to keep 1/3 as 1/3, we are going to change our division to multiply, and we are going to flip 6 over 1 to its reciprocal of 1 over 6. Then we multiply straight across the top and straight across the bottom. Because there will be problems on the MCA where you can use a calculator, and there are going to be problems where you cannot. So we can't forget everything that we learned without the calculator. All right, last problem. This is the same thing, but we can't have this be a mixed number. So remember, we start at the bottom and we work our way up, multiplying and then adding. Because we need to change this into an improper fraction. So 5 times 3 is 15. 15 plus 4 is 19. Denominator stays the same. Keep the division symbol right now. We're not ready to do any flipping and whatever. You'll confuse yourself. Let's get this into an improper fraction first. Then we have 2 times 2 is 4, plus 1 is 5. Denominator stays the same. Now you can keep, change, flip. Multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. Now, this is an improper fraction, so it would be appropriate to simplify this and turn it back into a mixed number. We do that by asking ourselves, how many 25s can we take out of 38? Only 1. Oops. So that is your whole number 1. Then we take that 25 away from 38. So 38 minus 25. And that answer, your leftovers, which is 13, is your numerator. Denominator stays the same. All right, your homework is the purple worksheet. That is due tomorrow, and I will be back tomorrow, so have a good day.